There's something deeply underrated about the kind of love that builds slowly, not with fireworks, but with warmth. It doesn't rush in and take over your life. It doesn't shout for attention or demand a spotlight. Instead, it quietly proves itself over time through a pattern of small, intentional acts. The kind of love that doesn't just arrive all at once, but gently settles in. And one of the most powerful ways that happens is through consistent thoughtfulness. Not grand gestures, not big promises, but the little things done consistently that show someone truly sees you. It might start with something simple, like when they ask how your meeting went, not because they're trying to make conversation, but because they actually remembered it was important to you. Or the way they send a message just to say, "I hope today feels a little lighter for you," and they don't need anything back. They're just thinking about you. These aren't dramatic acts. They're not the kind of things that end up in storybooks, but they're the kind of moments that make you pause and think, this person notices me. We often think love is built on the big statements, the trips, the gifts, the declarations. But more often, it's the quiet reliability that creates emotional security. The way someone offers to pick something up from the store because they remembered you ran out. The way they make a mental note of how you take your coffee or that you can't sleep if a light is left on. Those moments aren't loud, but they speak volumes. They say, "I pay attention to what matters to you even when you're not looking." You don't fall in love all at once. You fall in love in little pieces, in the way someone keeps choosing to show up for you without being asked. It's in the rhythm of their reliability, that sense that you don't have to question where you stand, because again and again they prove themselves in small ways, and those small ways begin to build something big. It's when they adjust plans to make sure you feel included, when they hold space for your anxieties without making you feel dramatic, when they remember the name of your friend who's going through something and they ask how she's doing, not because it affects them, but because it affects you. There's an emotional intelligence in that kind of thoughtfulness. It's someone being emotionally attuned to your world, not just their own. People underestimate the power of these things because they're not flashy. But consistency is incredibly romantic. It's romantic because it's rare. Anyone can do something big once. But it takes real care to show up in small ways, regularly. It takes intention to listen, to remember, and to act on what someone needs, even when they haven't spelled it out. When someone consistently makes your life feel easier, safer, more considered, you start to feel at ease in their presence. You feel like you can trust them. And that trust is what allows love to deepen. Because now it's not just about chemistry or attraction. It's about emotional dependability. The understanding that you're not alone in the little parts of life anymore. Someone's got their eye on the details that most people overlook. And it's in the ordinary moments, the ones we usually rush past, that these things matter the most. When you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're not your best self. If someone still shows up with patience, still puts effort into making you feel understood, that's when you feel something shift. That's when you realize you're not just dealing with someone who likes the idea of love, but someone who understands how to build it. You start to notice the difference between someone who's trying to impress you and someone who's trying to invest in you. Impressions fade. Investment compounds. And in relationships, that consistent emotional investment, those repeated small acts of care, become the foundation for something that actually lasts. It's never just about the gesture, it's about the message behind it. The message that says, "I'm paying attention, I care enough to make the effort, even when you don't ask me to." That's what makes the difference. Not the volume of the gesture, but the depth of the intention behind it. And when someone keeps showing up with that kind of thoughtfulness, day after day, even in the smallest of ways, that's when something real begins to take shape. It's easy to think that love is built on the big things. Milestones, shared goals, compatibility. But sometimes it begins in a far more delicate way. It starts when someone remembers the little things you thought they'd forget. Not the big, impressive facts you make a point of sharing, but the random pieces of your life you mention once in passing. A story about your childhood pet, the name of the coffee shop your dad used to take you to. That offhand comment you made about how you hate it when people interrupt. They pick up on it, not because they're trying to score points, but because they were genuinely listening. And when they bring it up again later, casually, like it's second nature, something shifts. You realize they were paying attention, not just hearing you, but absorbing you. It's the way they remember how you take your tea, or that you're always cold in restaurants and probably need a jacket. It's when they remind you to eat before your long meeting because they know you forget. You never had to ask for any of this. You didn't give them a checklist. But they noticed, and more importantly, they remembered. There's a quiet kind of intimacy in being known like that. Not for the version of you that you try to present to the world, but for the little quirks and patterns that live beneath the surface. And when someone reflects that back to you, it feels like being seen in a way that's incredibly personal. Those moments accumulate. You start noticing how they always seem to know what kind of day you're having before you even say anything. They sense when you're quieter than usual or when you're distracted, and they don't pry. They just make space for you. Or they distract you with something light, something funny they know will make you smile, not because they're trying to fix you, but because they want to bring you back to yourself. It's not performative, and it's not about making an impression. It's about showing care in a way that feels effortless and genuine. You begin to feel safe around that kind of energy. Because it's consistent. It's not someone trying hard to figure you out in order to impress you. It's someone who's already doing it without needing to be told how. And that creates a foundation of emotional connection that's hard to ignore. It's not love born out of intensity. It's love that grows out of familiarity, comfort, and attention to the little things that matter only to you, and somehow now they matter to them too. There's a special kind of comfort that comes when you don't have to keep repeating yourself, when someone just knows that you like sitting on the left side of the booth, or that certain songs make you nostalgic, or that you hate being rushed in the morning. These aren't things that come up in every conversation. You don't write them down or make a point of sharing them, but they pick them up, slowly, gently. And they keep them stored away like small treasures. And when they bring them back up at exactly the right time, it feels like being loved in a language that only the two of you speak. And it's not just the happy things they remember, it's the vulnerabilities too. The moments when you let your guard down and talked about something that hurt you, something you carry. They don't bring it up to make you feel exposed, but to show you that they held onto it, that it mattered to them. They remember not just the what, but the why. And that makes all the difference, because now you're not just bonding over shared experiences, you're bonding through a growing awareness of each other's emotional world. As time goes on, this kind of remembering starts to feel less like a pleasant surprise and more like a natural rhythm. They're not doing it to impress you anymore, if they ever were. They're doing it because it's who they are with you now, and maybe even more importantly, it's who they want to be. The kind of person who knows what matters to you and treats those things with care, and you find yourself doing the same. You start picking up on the things they don't say out loud. You remember how they like their toast, or that they always get a little quiet before a big day. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you're invested. Because when someone shows you that kind of attention, it's only natural to want to return it. There comes a moment in a connection where the pace slows down. The adrenaline, the butterflies, the spark, all of that might still be there, but it softens. It no longer needs to shout to be heard. That's when something different begins to form. It's no longer about excitement, it's about safety. You start noticing how you feel around them when the world is quiet, when you're not entertaining, when you're not trying to impress, when you're not performing, you're just being. And yet they're still fully there, with you, unshaken, unbothered, undistracted. There's an unspoken safety in that presence, a kind of emotional permission that says, you can be exactly who you are right now, and I'm not going anywhere. You feel it in the way they look at you when you're not speaking. There's no urge to fill the silence, no pressure to keep a conversation going. You can be still, and they don't make it awkward. That kind of comfort isn't instant. It builds over time. It comes from repeatedly showing that you can show your whole self and not be met with judgment. You can say something imperfect and not be met with distance. You can be vulnerable and not be met with pity. They're simply there, listening, holding space, letting you feel what you feel. It's in those quiet moments when you start to realize this isn't just attraction. This is something that feels stable. It doesn't need validation every second. It doesn't need to constantly be proving itself. It just is. And that's rare, because most people aren't comfortable in stillness. Most people want to fix things or analyze them or move on quickly to the next high. But when someone can sit with you, not just physically, but emotionally, and not try to change anything, you begin to understand what emotional presence really looks like. You feel safe to say the things that you've been carrying around quietly, the ones that don't always come out right. You trust they won't be used against you later. You trust that they'll be received with gentleness. And when someone shows you they can hold that space over and over again, your guard starts to drop. You start to bring more of yourself into the room, not just the confident, collected parts, but the fragile, uncertain ones. And those parts, once met with calm and care, begin to soften. You feel more connected, not just because you're sharing more, but because they're making it safe to do so. That kind of presence isn't loud or showy. It doesn't make grand claims. It doesn't interrupt with solutions. It waits. It listens. It watches your body language and asks gently if something's going on, even if you haven't said a word. It's intuitive in a way that feels effortless. And that's when something deep begins to form. You start to associate them with calm, with steadiness, with the feeling that no matter what's happening outside of this moment, this space between you two is solid. You notice how you don't have to constantly explain yourself. They pick up on the emotions behind your words. They know when to give you space and when to lean in. They're not always trying to be the hero. They're just trying to be with you in the moment without needing to fix it or change it. That's what emotional presence really is. Not solving the problem, but not abandoning you in it either. And slowly, you begin to crave that kind of presence more than anything else. You start to feel it in the small things, the way they reach for your hand when you're quiet, the way they sit a little closer when you're tired, the way they speak softer when they sense you're overwhelmed. All of these little signals add up. They become the language of your connection, one rooted in empathy, not performance. And it becomes clear that you're not just falling for who they are when they're on. You're falling for who they are when everything is off. When it's just the two of you, no distractions, no pretenses. The person who doesn't need you to be perfect to stay close. The person who meets your silence with patience instead of pressure. The person who understands that love isn't just about passion, it's about presence. There's a kind of love that doesn't announce itself in the grand or dramatic moments. It doesn't arrive in declarations or cinematic kisses in the rain. Sometimes it finds you in the spaces you thought were too ordinary to matter. In a lazy Saturday afternoon at the grocery store, in a drive through traffic with no music playing, in folding laundry together or figuring out what to eat for dinner. It's in these moments where laughter starts to become something more than just a reaction. It becomes connection. And what seems small at first slowly begins to shape how you feel about someone. You don't expect anything special to happen, but then they say something that makes you laugh from your gut, not just your mouth, the kind of laugh that sneaks up on you. And it's not just the joke, it's that they see the world a little like you do, that they can make the everyday feel lighter. They can take the weight out of something routine and turn it into a shared experience. And you realize that being around them makes you feel more at ease in your own skin. Like you don't have to be entertained to be happy. You just have to be with them. You start noticing how easy it is to enjoy even the most mundane things when they're around. Running errands doesn't feel like a chore anymore. It becomes another excuse to spend time together. Waiting in a long line becomes a conversation about the most ridiculous things. Cooking dinner becomes a dance between two people who just know how to move around each other. It's not about the activity, it's about the energy between you and how that energy makes even the plainest day feel full of life. Laughter has a way of breaking down barriers that words sometimes can't. It makes you feel safe to be a little silly, a little less guarded. And when someone can laugh with you, really laugh, it creates a bond that's hard to shake, because now you're not just attracted to them. You enjoy them. You enjoy how your personalities meet in the small spaces, how you bounce off each other, how they bring out a side of you that doesn't always show up around everyone. And it's not about being funny all the time. It's about the rhythm that builds between you both. The way you share glances when something funny happens in public, the little inside jokes that start to form, the strange voices you both do when you're being ridiculous at home. These are the things that no one else sees, but they become the language of your connection, the things you'll look back on months later and laugh about again, not because they were huge, but because they were yours. The real beauty of these moments is that they're unplanned. No one tries to create them. They just happen. And when they do, they create a kind of emotional safety net. You begin to associate that person with comfort, with joy, with lightness. They become the person you want to come home to, not because every moment is exciting, but because every moment is real. Even the dull ones have a certain kind of spark because they're shared. And sometimes those moments sneak up on you. You're walking down the street, talking about something trivial, and suddenly you're laughing so hard you forget what the original point was. You catch your breath and look at them, and something shifts. You realize that you're not just having fun, you're feeling something deeper. Because joy, when it's consistent, when it's shared, creates intimacy. It tells you that this isn't just someone you're interested in, it's someone you genuinely like. Someone who makes life feel just a bit more beautiful, even when nothing particularly beautiful is happening. And that's when you begin to fall, not because of some big revelation, but because of 100 small ones. Because they make you laugh when you're tired, because they see humor in the things you thought were too boring to matter, because they're not just there for the exciting highs, they're with you in the daily in-between, and they bring joy with them when they show up. You don't have to work for the connection. It finds you in the way your personalities play together, in the shared rhythm that only you two understand. There's something deeply moving about the way someone supports your growth, when they're not doing it for recognition or control. It's not about molding you into who they think you should be. It's about standing beside you as you become more of who you already are. That kind of support isn't loud. It doesn't always come in motivational speeches or dramatic encouragement. Often, it shows up in the way they listen to your goals and actually take them seriously. They don't dismiss your ambitions, even the ones you say with hesitation. They ask questions, they stay curious, they remember. And when the moment comes to take a step forward, they're there, gently encouraging you, not pushing, not pulling, just walking alongside you. It starts in the little comments. When you talk about wanting to make a change in your life or try something new, they don't respond with skepticism or jokes. They don't make you feel like your ideas are too big or too unrealistic. Instead, they say things like, "That sounds like you," or "I can see you doing that." It's subtle, but it starts to rewire how you see yourself. You begin to believe more in what you're capable of because someone else does too, and not just in theory, but in the way they show up. They become someone who notices your progress, even when it's small. They point out when you've handled something better than you used to. They celebrate your wins, even the quiet ones. When you get through a hard day, when you speak up for yourself, when you move past an old habit, they see it, they acknowledge it, and that validation doesn't feel performative. It feels earned. It feels real, because they're not just watching from a distance, they're engaged. They're invested in who you're becoming, not just who you've been. This kind of support feels different because it doesn't come with conditions. They don't need you to succeed so they can feel secure. They're not tying their worth to your accomplishments. They're simply proud of you for growing, for trying, for showing up. And you start to notice that you want to grow more when you're around them, not because you feel pressured to improve, but because they reflect a version of you that you're inspired to meet. There's a quiet kind of intimacy in having someone believe in you when you're still unsure. When you're full of doubt and they don't try to fix it or argue with it, they just sit with you and say, "I get it and I'm still here." They help you see that growth isn't linear, and they don't withdraw their support when you hit a setback. Instead, they remind you that falling doesn't erase the steps you've already taken, that your progress still matters even when it's not perfect. You begin to notice how they speak about their own life too, how they hold themselves accountable, how they're not just encouraging your growth, they're committed to their own. And that creates a dynamic that's not just supportive, but inspiring. You're not the only one doing the work. You're both evolving, and you start to feel like you're building something together, not just individually. They become the person you want to tell first when something good happens. Not because they'll congratulate you the loudest, but because they've seen what it took for you to get there. They'll understand the weight behind the moment. They'll get why it matters, even if no one else does. And when things don't go right, you don't have to hide it. You don't have to pretend you're fine. You can be disappointed in front of them, and they won't rush you through it. They'll let you feel it, and then remind you of your strength. There's something incredibly powerful about being with someone who sees potential in you that you've only begun to glimpse yourself. Someone who doesn't treat your dreams like temporary hobbies, but as real, tangible parts of your identity. They don't need you to shrink to fit the version of you they're comfortable with. They make room for your expansion. And not just room, they welcome it. They cheer for it. And slowly, that changes how you see yourself. You stop fearing your own evolution. You start chasing it. Not because you have something to prove, but because now you have something worth building within yourself and with someone who's walking the path beside you.